Hello and welcome in to the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas is senior writer Mike Craven. And Craven, we're going to talk about the week in Texas college football, but let's start off with a zoom out because Florida just fired Coach Billy Napier after a close win over Mississippi State, kind of like what Texas A&M did when they blew out Mississippi State and fired Jimbo the next day. Also, Colorado State, Jay Norvell is out. So zooming out, do either of these job openings affect Texas college coaches?
Well, I've already seen Rhett Lashley's name thrown out there on a couple of the Florida lists. I think Chris Vanini, Bruce Feldman have had him on this list. And I think that's going to be the norm for SMU fans. Like when you go on the road and beat Clemson, when you've won 20 straight conference games, when you've done so well moving up to the ACC, yeah, it's probably only fair that Lashley's name's out there. I think if Auburn opens, he'll be heavily rumored for that one as well. It sounds like Lane Kiffin is the number one choice for Florida, but it's so weird having these open in mid-October and having to discuss this stuff because what happens if Ole Miss is in the playoff? Like, does Florida want to wait for a Lane Kiffin? So, I think Rhett Lashley right now is a name that every time one of these SEC, big ACC jobs like Florida State opens, Auburn, Florida, I think he's constantly going to be mentioned for it, and it'll be up to SMU to see if they can keep him around.
Yeah, I know SMU fans wanted to throw a parade, and rightfully so, after it seemed like he reneged Arkansas, but this is going to be happening a lot with a lot more SEC schools. So it's going to be something where SMU fans have to hold the fort down and just hope and pray he stays at SMU and they keep on winning there.
And I wonder if, speaking of SMU staff, like a Scott Simons for a UAB or a Colorado State, like if he's ready to go be a head coach and, if he'll jump into the G5 ranks for whatever reason, it feels like offensive coaches have an easier job jumping straight into a bigger head coaching gig from coordinator. Like defensive coordinators a lot of times have to go to G5 and work their way up. Scott Simons may be somebody who gets an interview for Colorado State.
And you mentioned if Auburn opens. I think it's now when Auburn opens after they are now winless in the SEC. So it's going to be a crazy coaching carousel.
Yeah, there's 11 jobs open right now, which is 8% of the 136 teams in the FBS, and it's only going to grow. And then those will get filled by head coaches, or at least some of them will get filled by sitting head coaches, and that will open up even more. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, if the over-under on overall head coaching jobs that open, not just firings, but just open between hirings and firings. If you set it at 24, I think I would take the over. Like I think it's going to be closer to 30, 35 kind of head coaches playing musical chairs. It's going to be a wild cycle.
And for those who don't understand why this is happening, including me, can you explain why this is happening, Craven, when there was no openings last year, it felt like?
Well, that's why it's happening, or at least a big part of why it's happening is there was no openings last year. And the reason there wasn't many openings last year is because of the rev share uncertainty. They were staring down the lawsuit and the settlement and what that was going to be. There was a lot of ambiguity there of how much the revenue share was going to be, where were they going to get it, how quickly did they need it. And now that that's been mostly shored up and these colleges have figured out like, hey, there's money in the banana stand. We can figure this out. We still have, there's not the donor fatigue that they warned us about. When Penn State finds $50 million to fire James Franklin, like there is always money there. Florida State may spend $100 million to fire Mike Norvell. So there's always going to be money in these colleges to fire these guys. And I think that realization there was 10 jobs that probably needed to open last year that didn't, and now they're opening. And then there's going to be the 10 to 15 that would have opened organically this year that are also going to open. And so that makes it a congested cycle. And then I think the other part of it too is administrations and fan bases and donors have yet to recalibrate expectations in college football. We are so used to, you lose 2 or 3 games, you get fired, you stink. It's very binary in college athletics and college football specifically. You were either undefeated 11-1 or you were awful and you needed to have a new change. I think the new norm is going 9-3, 8-4. Like even good teams are going to have those kind of seasons, and it's up to colleges and to administration to go like, hey, maybe we don't spend that money on the buyout. Like imagine what James Franklin could have done with 10 million, 15 million extra in the roster next year. Maybe not a lot, but I think more and more colleges as we move forward and start understanding that 10-2, 9-3 isn't an awful season, and that there's going to be some bottoming out, and there's going to be some volatility where you're not going to just be 9-3, 8-4, 10-2, 9. There's going to be the occasional 4-8s. There's going to be occasional 6s and 6s. But when you can it's either going to be people recalibrate that and we have less of these, or it becomes European soccer or NHL hockey where it feels like, coaches get fired every year.
Well, and a case in point in that parity is Texas A&M being the only undefeated team in the SEC now after week 8, which what world is that? You're used to at least 3 or 4 SEC teams being undefeated. It felt like in the before times of NIL and transfer portal. So the number 4 Aggies, they outlast Arkansas 45-42. Backdoor Bobby Petrino, he busted my CFB pick'em bracket because I had Aggies 7.5, and that one hurt. Craven, I saw you were hurting about that one too online.
Yeah, absolutely had Aggies 7.5. Mike Elko said it in his press conference after the game. This is his 6th time to be coaching in Arkansas A&M, and all 6 have come down to the final possession in the fourth quarter. Like, they're just weird games. It doesn't matter if you played at Jerry World. It doesn't matter if you played on campuses. Arkansas A&M play close games. Shame on us for not realizing that. But Bobby Petrino is coaching for a job at Arkansas, right? And saying that you're 2-0 against the spread against Tennessee and A&M, like that's something Bobby is absolutely going to point out. That they are overachieving, that they are exceeding expectations. Just look at the lines and how well we've played those two teams. So I was not surprised that Arkansas went for that touchdown late in the game that seemingly didn't matter much other than to those of us who are degenerates. But what I took away from the game is Texas A&M can win multiple ways. We saw them go on the road at Notre Dame and win a shootout. Now they've gone on the road and won at Arkansas in a shootout. Maybe one of the takeaways should be A&M needs to play better defense on the road.
We'll get to that.
But at home, we've seen them play kind of in rock fights against Auburn, against Florida, and good teams can win in multiple different avenues, multiple different routes. And I think Texas A&M, you look around the country, the parity is strong. There are not many great teams. Texas A&M is 3rd in the country, and they are one of the 4 or 5 teams I think could win a national championship.
And a big reason for that is the emergence of Marcel Reed at quarterback. I think – I was thinking about this today because I know, Craven, you had wrote that column before the season, like your opinion of the 2025 Aggies, whether or not they go over 7.5 is basically your opinion on if Marcel Reed developed over this offseason. I think he was the most important player for his respective team heading into the season. He's been better than the best case scenario, at least in my mind. What did you make of his play yesterday?
I mean, he was fantastic. Without Marcel Reed, A&M falls into the Bobby Petrino trap and loses that game. 23 of 32 for 280 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And then
he also gets credit for touchdowns he seemingly wasn't a part of on the stat sheet, because that Reuben Owens touchdown where he runs 20 yards without getting touched is because the linebacker is so scared of Marcel Reed's run threat.
Yeah, and Reed had 6 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown. He had a touchdown, like a 46-yard touchdown, to kind of remind us that he has those legs. He hasn't used them as much this year. He hasn't been as dual threat as maybe we thought he was going to be. He's been a real passer. And it was a 50-50 balance. It was 35 runs, 32 throws. A&M really good, 152 yards after the catch, which is over half of their yards receiving or after the catch. And so we've talked about it on the show. I've talked about it on the Aggie War Pod. I think the story is, one, Marcel Reed absolutely improved over the offseason, has taken a huge jump and has put A&M in position to win the SEC and to be in the college football playoff. I think at this point, it would be more of a shock if they're not in the CFP than if they are.
They'd have to collapse.
But then, two, I think A&M did an incredible job of surrounding him with the type of talent that would work with his skill set. Like, they went and found wide receivers that can take some of those quick passes and turn them into big games. Concepcion's been great. Craver's been great. Roman Bethel had a big game in this one with a touchdown. Or Bethel Roman, sorry. Got dyslexia popped up. But A&M has surrounded him with playmakers. Reuben Owens has been incredible, kind of living up to his 5-star status finally as he stayed healthy. So the A&M offense has been great. The Texas A&M defense has been really good at home. The conversation becomes like, what is that unit? Was that a Florida, Auburn, Mississippi State thing, or what do you feel about the A&M defense? I guess
I think I put more of that on Arkansas is really underrated with the Bobby Petrino coached offense, and also Taylor Green strides, eating up 5 yards every step he takes. That dude's unbelievable. Mike Elko said we didn't play anywhere near the standard of Texas A&M football ever at any point. So I think Elko is going to get these boys right in the upcoming week of practice.
It's a great point about Green. That's the best quarterback they're going to face the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Nussmeier maybe at his strength or at his best could be better, but he's injured. And so, Arch isn't, maybe Mizzou's got a pretty solid passing game, but
I saw the stat.
That Arkansas offense is the best one they're probably going to see the rest of the game.
Yeah, I saw this stat from Robert Behrens, who he kind of irks me sometimes because he always does the Jimbo versus Sark comparison of their first few seasons, which that's just me being butthurt. But he had a really good stat here. Arkansas is the last team that A&M is going to face that was ranked top 20th nationally in both rushing and passing offense. The only other team remaining in the top 40 is Missouri, and only the rushing offense. So this is the best offense they're going to see.
I'm not burying Robert here because I enjoy some of our Twitter back and forth that we've had a few times. Kyle, that does the Aggie fact books. It's kind of like Blink 182, where like the actual original bands are okay. It's like what spawned them that is awful, right? I don't think there is a worse corner of social media, in my opinion, than the finding stats that without context to back up some outrageous claim and then like make it as a true thing. Twitter.
Yeah.
I can, over the last 6 years, these 3 stats point to this one thing that, I just can't. I think
he's trolling. I think he knows that.
That's why I said they're Blink 182.
Yeah.
But the spawn, like now that's the whole, like that's every interaction in sports Twitter is just like this weird stat thing that you can make to like look like you're making a point that like if you have a brain doesn't exist. I just can't. I just absolutely can't.
Well, he's trolling and it's working because I take the bait every single time. It triggers me every time I see it.
I have a rule that I don't always follow, but I like this one on social media. And if anybody out there needs never interact with somebody with a blue like Twitter mark that's not like in media.
Yeah, okay. I was about to say I got one, man. Like, don't interact with me then.
Because like if you're just a dude named John who like has a 9-to-5 job and you have like you're just like you have it just for engagement, just so you can get paid off of engagement. Like it is always a trap. Like if you see something, you're like, what the heck is that? And you're about to respond, and it's just like some random person with a blue check mark. Like they are trying to get paid by Elon, and you just gotta let it go. I'm trying. I need to like staple that to my forehead.
I think Arkansas's offense is just really freaking good, and I also think A&M's going to figure it out because Damian Sanford is a freaking stud, dude. I mean, so his early 4th down stop he had by wrapping up Green as he threw was awesome, and then at one point he blew up a zone read by Green by tackling the running back fake and then tackling Green who had the ball. I was like, this guy's unbelievable. Torian York was quiet, which was kind of the first time all season he's been quiet. So I expect him to bounce back.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they go on the road to face LSU next week. The Tigers, not a real good offense, but the rushing numbers are what concern me. Early in the season, we had concerns about the A&M run defense when they played UTSA, even when they played Utah State. Arkansas ran the ball really well, even outside of Green. Mike Washington had 147 yards and averaged 9.2 yards a carry. As a team, Arkansas ran the ball 32 times for 268 yards. That's 8.4 yards a carry. Like eventually, and this is a good conversation to have, right? Like I don't think it'll prevent A&M from getting to the college football playoff. It may not even prevent them from getting to the SEC championship. But if we start flipping it forward to A&M as a legit national championship contender, and how do they stack up with the Ohio States and the Indianas and the Alabamas and the Oregons of the world, the nitpick, the concern is going to be that A&M run defense against a competent offense. And we've seen 2 good running games in Notre Dame and Arkansas. And maybe it's a road thing, but I think it's more the teams that they face. Like they could really challenge A&M in the trenches, and they had guys that running the ball that can go make plays. Like they gave A&M trouble. That's something to watch out for if they play Alabama in the SEC championship or when they run into teams in the CFP.
It does feel like A&M is one of the most complete teams in the nation, but they do have this one chink in their armor.
And everybody does.
That's the thing. I think every team does have a bugaboo. And that would be the one argument is why, like, hey, maybe this is just how it is.
And maybe Ohio State doesn't. Maybe Ohio State is just like clear in a way better than everybody else. But everybody else has that stuff. Everybody else is human. Everybody else has some blemishes, and that is A&M's right now.
The good news is that A&M's blemish is, I think, the strength of their head coach, and so he's going to take that personal pride and it's like, this is not going to end our season. Yeah, like he will get that part fixed. Where's another chair? He needs to slam another chair.
Yeah, they're rolling. I mean, they passed their first road test. They got 3 more with LSU, Mizzou, Texas. You go 1 and 2 in those, and you're in. You go 2 in one of those, and you're probably in the SEC championship game. So a big win for A&M. And Elko, what I see, this is the funny thing. Like, when he had that response after the 16-10 Auburn win where he was like, why is everybody so down? He didn't have that response last night. He was pissed off.
Yeah, I know.
Right? And it was the same thing.
His football core.
Right.
He's
just a defensive guy. Like he prefers 16-10 over 41-38 or whatever. Like that's just where he's at as a coach. And it cracks me up.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to our second team that was in the top 10. I don't think they are anymore. I believe they're 15th now, around there. Texas Tech. They stormed back down 19-7 midway through the fourth. Will Hammond shows some guts in for Baron Morton. They take the lead with 2 minutes remaining, but Arizona State gets to storm the field after a game-winning drive. Craven, I need to take an L on my Will Hammond's going to Wally Pitt Baron Morton take. He did not have 100 passing yards until midway through the fourth quarter, and Texas Tech had 7 points. At that point, ASU's 1 touchdown until the game winner was basically because Will Hammond threw an interception on their own side of the field. So all of this is while Baron Morton just looks clean as hell on the sidelines with a chain, looking like young Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson out there on the sideline. I'm going to take the L here. That's my bad.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech needs Baron Morton. I've always thought Texas Tech needs Baron Morton, and it's maybe this is a dad analogy because I'm a new father and this is how my brain works now. But it's like, imagine you just went and bought a brand new Cadillac and you have 2 sons and one of them has to drive it home. Even if you like the younger son a little bit more and think he's going to have like a higher upside, like, oh man, he's clever. He's going to do some big things. Like you're going to go, but he's never driven before, or he's only driven for like a couple of months. And your older one's kind of a dummy, probably not going to make it huge in the world, but he's been driving for 5 years. He can pull a trailer. Like you want him driving the Cadillac like that. To me, that is Baron Morton. Like the conversation, a lot of times when we're having, not you and I, but just in general, when we're having quarterback conversations, it's always about like, who is going to be better? And we try to look at it from like, when we look back in 5 years, would it be crazy that Baron Morton is starting in front of Will Hammond? And maybe it will look that way in retrospect, but right now in 2025, Baron Morton is more equipped to drive this yacht. And that's exactly what this Texas Tech team is, right? It is a yacht that has been put together, and it just needs a bus driver. And it needs an experienced one that can make plays with his arm. I felt that the tape's out on him, and you could tell Arizona State took away kind of his first reads, and he's going to make the quick, right decision. And I think Arizona State baited him into making a lot of like short, easy, quick throws, and that was the game plan for Arizona State. Like give him that first option, get it out of his hands early. We'll go tackle and rally and see if they can put together 10 or 15 yard or 10 or 15 play drives. The thing that surprised me was just the lack of running game. Hammond had 15 carries. Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams had 12 combined. And some of that's game flow and gameplay and how that's going. And I think if you asked Mac Leftwich this morning, he would say he wished he had tried to run the ball a little bit more with the other guys and then work Hammond in. Instead, you look and Hammond had 37 attempts and 15 rushes. That's 52 times the ball is in his hands. Like they ran like 65 plays. Like that's a lot to put on your young quarterback. And
maybe I'm way psychoanalyzing, but maybe Leftwich feels kind of the same about you that you do about the quarterbacks. Maybe when Baron Morton's in the game, he leans on that run game more because he knows Baron Morton needs to be the bus driver or the yacht captain. And then sometimes he gets the new shiny toy in there with Will Hammond. He's like, let me go let's unleash this guy. Maybe that's a case.
It could be, and I don't know this for sure. I haven't talked to Leftwich about this. I obviously wasn't at the game and to ask it post game or anything. I wonder how many of those Hammond carries were read options, and how often Arizona State shows him a window that makes him keep it. But that's what the Sun Devils want him to do. And so I think at those times, a lot of times the offense coordinator, I think you have to like get into the ear or whatever and be like, this isn't really a read op, like hand the ball off. Like we're going to run the ball here. Dickey had 283 yards rushing last week, and he has 40 this week, and it wasn't, he averaged 4.4 yards a carry. Williams had 7.3, like it's not like it was 1.8 and 1.2 or something. Like they had some success. They just didn't have the ball a lot. They were behind the chains. They were in 2nd and 8 a lot. And it just was one of those where they were clearly out of rhythm early offensively. But to Tech's credit, they took the lead late in that game. And then had you asked Joey McGuire, had you asked Shield Wood, hey, we'll give you a 3-point lead with 2 minutes left in the game. Your defense has the ball. Like, would you take it? Like, they're going to take that on the road every day of the week.
I think that's the silver lining of this game for Texas Tech, because you wrote in the post-game column, like their margin of error is over. They have no more, because last year in the CFP, the committee put 3-loss Alabama ahead of Big 12 champion Arizona State in their rankings. Now, Arizona State gets in because of like the conference championship rules or whatever, but that showed you what they think about the Big 12. One team's getting in. But the fight that this team showed down 19-7 midway through the fourth quarter should give fans some confidence that they're going to bow up and fight for the rest of the year and respond to this adversity through the rest of the season.
I think so. It was a great sign to see, because if you had a question mark about Texas Tech entering the season, it wasn't about talent. It was either about the coaching staff. I've heard a lot of national folks specifically, I think, kind of question the coaching staff. Mac Leftwich come from Texas State. Like, Joey McGuire's won in high school. Can he win big with college? But I think the real question about this team was like, how does a group of mercenaries handle adversity and come together as a unit? And I think McGuire is uniquely positioned to be really good at that. I think that fits one of his strengths. Like, he's a culture guy. He's a builder. He's a personable. He can bring people together. I think that's one of Joey's superpowers. But this is where it's tested. Can you prevent one loss from becoming two? And the good news for the Red Raiders is they have Oklahoma State next up, and they could probably sleepwalk through that and not have to worry about it. And it probably gives them another week to get Baron Morton closer to healthy, because Will Hammond can go beat Oklahoma State for sure. So that if they were playing BYU this next weekend, I'd have some real concerns. But I think the way the schedule sets up and where this loss came, you can kind of reset calibrations, but it does eliminate their margin of error. Like, they have to be 11-1 and playing for the Big 12 championship to have any chance at the CFP.
And some of this too is just credit to Arizona State, because Sam Leavitt plays.
100%.
We predicted the wrong QB not to play. We thought it was Sam
we
Leavitt
had it wrong
playing
on both sides. Yeah.
But I mean, Sam Leavitt's a dog, and Jordan Tyson is a dog too. That wide receiver who he had the difference making 33-yard catch on 4th down, where he's in this game making fun of his own hurt hamstring and still scoring touchdowns out there. The former Allen Eagle showing out. So Arizona State's not your normal unranked Big 12 team. Like, they are the defending Big 12 champions for a reason. And Sam Leavitt's been kind of injured a little bit this year, so he looked healthier, and they can beat you on any given Saturday.
I won't say which coach on the staff it was, but an Arizona State coach reached out to me and said, I need to put them on the power poll. Because the Sun Devils have beaten Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, and Texas State, and they got Houston this weekend.
And that is part of Arizona State's strategy in terms of recruiting. They do a big Texas to Tempe movement, because they attack the high school ranks. Jordan Tyson went to Allen. Part of them being in the Big 12 is they get to play all these Texas teams, and that gives them a footprint in the state of Texas. And Brian Carrington, a cornerbacks coach for Arizona State, made his bones as a recruiting coordinator at Houston and Texas and TCU. So they were all at THSCA coaching school. That entire staff was there. So yeah,
I don't think that there are 5 coaches in college football I respect more than Kenny Dillingham.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw his kind of explainer of like getting out coached and what that means to him. And basically he said, like, he considers everything everything under the umbrella to being outcoached. Right? Like if they line up on the football field and the other team's just more talented than them, well, they got outcoached because they're the ones that he brought everybody there. And just the accountability and the way he runs that program, guys play for him. You see when I was growing up, Arizona State's fan base was zero. It was nothing. It's a party school.
Yep.
And just the rush in the field and the way he's a homegrown guy. Obviously he's from there. He went there. He's good for the sport. And I hope he stays at Arizona State for as long as he can. I wonder what kind of job would pull him from there, but Dillingham's a rock star, man.
Well, you wonder what kind of job would pull him from there because they're going to come calling at some point.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they already are.
Okay, let's go to Texas. It's time to rip this Band-Aid off. Number 21 Texas wins 13-10 in overtime against unranked 2-4 Kentucky. I say wins like a question because I said to some buddies after this game, hey, good win. The season's over, by the way. Texas could have dropped out of the top 25 after a road conference win. I would have said, yeah, I get it. I understand.
Yeah, I asked for help with the power poll yesterday, and Texas was lower on yours than they ended up on mine. You're pretty down on the horns there. I don't want to offend Michael Taff by being too negative about the Texas Longhorns winning at Kentucky. I don't want him to have to jump in here and save his teammates from answering questions.
Hey, can you put a smile on your face, Craven?
I know.
We just won on the road.
I know. I haven't slept very much. I'm grumpy. But I think two things can be true at once. I know that's fighting a losing battle in 2025 and the way our brains work. But you can be happy that you escaped getting beaten on the road. This Kentucky team kept Ole Miss out of the college football playoff last year. Teams lose. Yeah, I get it. It is hard to go on the road and win in the SEC. Kentucky, until recently, was always a team that jumped up and got one. They used to do that to Georgia all the time. This is why Mark Stoops almost got the job at Texas A&M. This is what Kentucky does. They drag you into quicksand and they make it ugly, and you're embarrassed that you're ever in a fist fight with them. But then also, Texas shouldn't be in these football games. That defense is too good for it to be an overtime game against Kentucky.
Yeah.
The Longhorns offense is just anemic. And I don't know. I don't have answers for it. What floors me is that Sark watched this for a full offseason, and this is still the cards that are being played. Right? You can't convince me that this looked better in April against this defense in spring practice, or in July in workouts against this defense, or on August 15th against this defense. And Sark had to see this coming. He had to have watched practice and gone, our quarterback's not as great as everybody thinks he's going to be. We don't have a ton of talent in the running back room, at least not healthy talent. Our offensive line is taking a major step back. We miscalculated along there. They're owning us. I just don't the offensive guru that Sark is supposed to be. I just don't see how it looks like this halfway through the season.
I get that the offense has a lot of fundamental issues outside of Arch Manning, but I do think this conversation needs to center on Arch Manning because he was missing throws that cannot be missed. And I know he's under pressure, but there are drag routes that he flubs. Jack Endries is wide open down the field, and it's overthrown. So I agree with you, Craven. I don't know whether Arch just looks like a rock star in practice and he comes out to the game and this is just mental and it's the yips. I just don't know at what point we transition from, I've always said it's mental and he has the yips, to maybe he's just not the answer this year. Does Matthew Caldwell outplay him in practice every week? Maybe that's something we're just not going to know. Maybe Arch looks like a rock star, and that's why Sark didn't have a level of concern, and he threw out this offense as it is because Arch, it's just when the lights get bright. But this defense is too good to waste, and it's the last year with Michael Taff and Anthony Hill. Those guys aren't walking through the door next year.
And Malik Muhammad.
And you owe it to that defense to put the guy out there that gives the team the best chance to win. And I think there's questions about if that's Arch right now.
I think Steve Sarkisian wholly miscalculated his roster And maybe if you gave him true serum, he would say playing so deep into the playoffs last year, like you don't get into the portal. You're not able to kind of look at those young guys. They're preoccupied and they're not able to go do what a Texas Tech did because they don't have that extra month to just scour the portal. I don't know what the excuses would be, but I think it's a program, it's a staff, it's a head coach who overestimated the talent that they had waiting in the wings. They had recruited really well. They all look like really great athletes. They all test and they look good in shorts and they do all the things that get you 4 and 5 stars. But I don't know how many leaders do they have in that locker room on the offensive side of the ball? Like,
on the offense, I don't know. Like DJ Campbell and Cole Hudson.
Right. And DJ Campbell's book.
Arch, maybe. I mean, Arch seems like he says all the right things and he is, well media trained and he has taken accountability for everything that's happened this year. But I don't know if he's earned the leadership title around his name. So I don't know who they have on offense.
That unit sorely misses Jake Majors and Jordan Whittington.
Yeah.
Just blue collar, lunch pail guys that are going to light you up. They just don't have a ton of that. There's not a lot of energy. It just looks like, and if Sark, like if you run through the scenarios of what's possible here, one of them is that Sark can't do that to Arch Manning. That he can't bench him for Caldwell. That like if this is mental and he is looking really good in practice and is just not carrying over to the game, does that insinuate that Arch is not capable of handling that kind of adversity?
And to be clear, I don't know what 21-year-old kid would be capable of handling this adversity because he got built up into a god before he started this year.
Yeah, it's confounding. It's confounding. And I guess I go back to like July, August, and I guess I don't understand. I think I'm left with 2 thoughts here. Either this caught Sark completely off guard.
Which was that say about Sark?
Right. Or he knew a version of this was coming and he didn't do a good job of like tapping the brakes on the expectations. Like he can't stop everybody from making Arch Manning like first team all country and the Heisman Trophy favorite and all that kind of stuff. But like, I know how this works. He's got a cell phone. He can get some stuff out, like Chris Lowe can be writing some things about like Arch Manning, not living, or Pete Thamel. Like he can get some quotes to him during their sit down of like, oh, Arch is still growing. He's shown some, like he could get that out there. And he didn't. And so I guess that's the part that confuses me is that either this caught Sark off guard and he saw something in March, April, June, July, August that he's not seeing anymore, or he did a poor job of readying the world for how this offense was going to look.
So the offense has 179 total yards, which is the lowest in the Sark era. And did some quick math today. If you divide that over 4 quarters, that is 44.75 yards a quarter. And they actually played in overtime, so it's less than that. Their best offense is Ryan Niblett punt returns right now.
Yeah, 3.3 yards per play, 1.7 yards per rush. Just really, really bad. Third down numbers, obviously not good. 5 of 16 on third downs. Kentucky ran 30 more plays than Texas did while facing the Texas defense. Right, like Kentucky's offense outperformed Texas's offense while facing Texas's defense, and Texas only had to play Kentucky's. The Longhorns were lucky to win this game. Like they
shouldn't have won this game.
They should have won this game. You're right. And so, a week after what I thought was a pretty good performance against Oklahoma, it's just not a good football team. It's just not a good offense. That's what I should say. It's a good defense, decent special teams. Mason Shipley's good punt returns, but the punter is awesome, but this offense stinks. It just stinks.
I want to come at this from a place of compassion because I mean what I say, and I don't know what 21-year-old kid could handle these expectations that Arch has had in front of him. I sure as hell couldn't. I would have crumbled and pooped my pants on national TV multiple times by now. I would have already been benched. But as I look through the season, there's been so many points where I feel like it's going to be a turning point for Arch of like, okay, the first game against Ohio State, you realize that you just played the best team in the country and you played poorly and you still had the ball with a chance to go win that game. And then versus UTEP, you have 10 incompletions in a row and get booed off the stadium and you realize, man, I'm still here. The sun came up the next day, and we still got everything to play for. You lose to Florida in the swamp, and you go from number 1 to unranked, and you're still the quarterback, and you say, hey, we still have everything to play for. The OU game could be a turning point because that's a crazy environment, and you get that top 10 win, and it's the monkey off your back. And we're running out of instances where it should be the mental turning point, and it should be like, hey, the nerves should be gone a bit now, and the pressure should be lightened. And that's why I say I don't know at what point I just turn from, man, this kid has got a mental issue going on, he's crumbling under the pressure, this is the yips, to just like physically he's not near the quarterback we thought he was. I think he already is not the quarterback we thought he was, but I'm talking like he's not even like an NFL quarterback. He's not a draft pick type guy.
Do you think Kentucky's defense is better than Oklahoma's defense?
No.
Then why do they play so bad? Like, and to me, that's the sign of a lack of leadership. Like, the defense plays well every single week. They didn't play well against Florida, I guess you could say. They didn't just get blown out, right? But like, they handled the success last week against Oklahoma and carried it over against Kentucky. Clearly, the Texas offense did not. Nick Brooks took a step back at left guard after having a pretty solid week. The running game and Trey Wisner took a monster step back. The passing game and just Arch Manning's confidence and just his bravado never looked like it was there the way it was against Oklahoma.
It looked like deer in the headlights when they zoomed in on his face.
And that is not having somebody in that huddle that can just grab somebody by the face mask, or somebody on Tuesday that can do it. Like, the biggest misconception is that coaches do that. Like, coaches recruit the guys who can do that. And Texas is sorely lacking on the offensive side of the ball, guys who can temp check that room. And that is why they were up and down every single week.
Texas has failed to score more than 17 points in regulation in 7 of the last 9 games against Power 4 defenses. That's from Jeff Ketchum at Orange Bloods, a stat that is scary.
Yeah, that sounds schematic. That's on the OC.
Who's the OC?
That's right.
Okay.
I think that's the discussion that's going to happen. Like, once Texas's real CFP and SEC championships, once it's shot, like once the season really is over.
Because it is over, just not technically yet, but right. It is over.
It's not technically over yet, but once it is, I think that becomes the next conversation around Texas football, as if Steve Sarkisian's play calling and being the OC, if that is the thing holding the Longhorns back, just like that conversation happened with Ryan Day. And so I do think it's probably getting time. And this is, I don't want to derail the podcast, but the job of the head coach is different than it was 10 years ago. Nick Saban got to worry about ball a lot more than Steve Sarkisian gets to worry about ball. And if it was hard to be the OC and head coach back then imagine what it is now. And so I think it's getting to the point where those conversations are at least valid and ones that should be had. But we could probably do a whole hour podcast on Texas.
Yeah, and I know we can't totally derail here, but I ask around the state what play callers are really excelling as head coaches too, because like, is Mike Elko for sure the defensive play caller at A&M? Because they're excelling.
Yeah.
But Sark, Scotty Walden at UTEP, Dave Aranda at Baylor, there's a lot of instances of this coordinator, head coach, his side of the ball is not working.
I can give you one OC, one play caller head coach is doing pretty well.
And who's that? Rhett Lashley?
That's Rhett Lashley.
Yeah. Okay. Let's that was a little somber there, that Texas segment. Let's pick it up a little bit. SMU knocks off Clemson 35-24 in Death Valley. SMU has won 20 consecutive conference games, which is the longest active streak in the nation. I know Clemson's not the same. I know they didn't have Cade Klubnik, but wins like this, when SMU is now 11-0 in the ACC, it always reminds me of Florida State trying to sue their way out of the league, citing that the league added SMU.
We could talk about Kevin Jennings and his heroic effort. That was an awesome game by Kevin Jennings. Hats off to the toughness. That was awesome. But what I think stood out to me the most about this football game is that SMU beat Clemson in the trenches. They averaged 5 yards a rush compared to Clemson's 1.2. SMU had 4 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. SMU had 1 sack. 6 tackles for loss. Like, the Mustangs were the better team in the trenches, and that just blows my mind because I am old enough to have watched SMU play a decade ago. And if you had tried to convince me that like that program in Dallas on the Hilltop in a decade's time was going to be undefeated in the regular season in the ACC over 2 years and in the college football playoff and walking into Clemson and beating them and it not even registering a blip on the college football kind of earthquake meter is just the biggest sign, the biggest compliment I can give that program is that this wasn't a shock. It's like the biggest compliment you could give Vanderbilt is that their students didn't rush the field after they beat LSU. That means they walked into that stadium thinking that they could beat LSU. The fact that nobody even blinked an eye, it says a lot about Clemson, but I think it also says a lot about SMU that this is just a game that they win. And hats off to Rhett Lashley for being able to put that together because when they lost to Baylor, they lost to TCU. This thing could have been dead in the water. Suddenly they're 3-0 in the conference. They got Miami at home. They can do some things here in this league this year.
Yeah, and hats off to the defensive coordinator Scott Simons because you mentioned the trenches. I mean, that defense held Clemson to 35 rushing yards on 30 carries and 0 net rushing yards in the second half. Yeah. And this is, you talked about it could have been dead in the water. I thought this defense was cooked. Yeah. After the first 3 weeks of the season, I was like, they don't have the personnel. They don't got the guys. Like, they're done. And this coaching job has been magnificent.
Yeah, Simons is great. Simons is really, really good at what he does. He is going to be a head coach sooner than later, a relatively young guy, DFW native, just a really, really good football coach. And that has been the difference for this Mustangs program. They have always scored points. And then June Jones was their head coach back then, right? Like they've always been able to score points. They just could not handle the physicality and run the ball and block and that stuff offensive line. And they just never could play defense. That was even true year one when Lashley got there. They just could not play defense. With the portal and the NIL and Scott Simons and his just schematics, the Mustangs have become a really balanced program. And you have 2 young, excellent coordinators leading a program that is on the rise. I don't know if this season, I mean, they're not, I don't think they're going to play for the ACC championship and like reach the CFP again and all that kind of stuff. But they're clearly not taking a major step back. And that was to me, the important part of 2025.
Yeah, maybe it's loser talk to say like, hey, 9-3 is a win of a season when it's not as good as what last year was. But I think that's a win for the season because I think the personnel last year was a lot better than this year's team. Yeah, and if no disrespect to the guys on this year's team, but like last year's team on the defensive side, the defensive front was special.
Yeah, they don't have Elijah Roberts and that. I mean, they just don't. Really good football players. But, like Cam Robertson has played really well. Isaiah Smith had his best game. Like those guys who have been in the program for 4 or 5 years have turned the corner. They did not play well early in the year, specifically against Baylor when they give up like 45, 48 points, whatever that was, and give up that lead in the second half. Yeah, I just hats off to SMU. That was a big win. I think it was a win that illustrated how far this program is and that it's a legit Power 4 contending program year in, year out. And that Lashley is one of the better coaches in the country, and it's why his name gets mentioned for all these jobs that are opening.
Yeah, by the way, I think they win this game too, even if Klubnik plays.
I don't think that had much to do with it.
Do you feel better about SMU's game against Miami now that Miami lost to Louisville, or worse because now Miami's pissed off?
Yeah, that's a good coaches always hate that stuff, but I think it's true. Yeah, I mean, Miami is going to walk into SMU knowing, just like we were talking about with Texas Tech, Miami's margin of error is gone as well. They don't have enough wins on their schedule to, buoy them if they lose another game. And so they can't come into the Hilltop and win that game. But if you're SMU, I think it does serve purpose to be able to have film and see what works, what didn't. And I think you feel pretty good about your chances there.
SMU plays Louisville too, right?
Yes. Yeah, both at home.
So that's good. And Gerald J. Ford Stadium's got a bit of a home atmosphere now too.
Yeah, November 1 against Miami, and then November 22, which is the week before the end of the season there against Louisville. And then They got trips to Wake Forest this week, Boston College, and then Cal. So, a manageable schedule. If you're going to play those games against those teams, you want them at home. So we'll see how they can handle it.
Okay, let's go back to the Big 12 for the revivalry. I loved how the announcers kept calling this the revivalry. They just no blue bonnet battle talk from them.
Yeah, we're going to shame them into making it right, I think.
Okay, TCU overcomes 3 lightning delays and a fourth quarter Baylor surge to win this one, 42-36. I'm going to do some game narration. I know it's not the best podcasting, but if you missed the end of this game because you kind of turned it off after the third lightning delay, this is what happened. TCU's up 42-21 with 3 minutes remaining in the fourth, and they have the ball. Josh Hoover has a fumble 6, which is his third turnover that allowed a touchdown in 2 games. So that's a narrative to watch. Sawyer Robertson throws a dime to Cole Wilson. They recover the onside kick. All of a sudden, it's 42-36. TCU's got the ball. Baylor's got the ball, and this could be the worst TCU loss since the 65-7 Natty or the Colorado game. Like, they could have been bad. And Sawyer Robertson throws his 4th interception to Nnamdi Obiizor. Just so everyone knows, TCU is the winningest team in the Big 12 in the last 3.5 years, as Sonny Dykes will have you know after this game.
Yeah, this was all about running the football. If your favorite team is struggling to run the football, schedule Baylor because the Bears will allow you to get back on track there. TCU's been Jekyll and Hyde. When they've won games, they've ran the ball. When they've lost them, they haven't been able to. It's 154 in wins entering that game. It was 41 in losses. They ran for more against Baylor than they had in the 3 games against Big 12 opponents they had this season combined. So Kavorian Barnes gets 25 attempts. They run the ball 38 times total against 31 passings. Like, that's the recipe. That's what this offense needs to look like for TCU.
Yeah, Sonny Dykes said the takeaway from last year's game was that Baylor was the more physical team. Well, this offensive line on TCU came to play yesterday, and nobody wanted to tackle Kavorian Barnes at all. He was a man possessed.
It's been fun watching him get back to where he was early in his UTSA career, get some injuries behind him. He's matured. He's grown up as a lot of us do during college. TCU's kind of given him a new lease on life. And, he only had 12 carries last week against Kansas State. He should have gotten more. He was running the ball well in that one as well and just kind of got away from them. You could tell the Frogs went into this game like, we are going to run the ball and we are going to stick with running this football, and it won them the football game. And then conversely, on the Baylor side, it's a shame that we have it's kind of mirror image stuff, right? Like, we talk about TCU, like, when they lose, it's because Josh Hoover doesn't have a great game. And that's the only way TCU can win, is when Josh Hoover has a great game. It's the same thing for Baylor. Like, it is Sawyer Robertson or bust for the Bears. He had some turnovers at home against Arizona State early in the year, and that's why they lost that football game. He throws 3 interceptions in this one against TCU, and that's why they lose this football game. So it's not fair to Sawyer that he has to be, a Heisman type quarterback every single week to give the Bears a chance. But on those weeks that he isn't, and he's human, so there's going to be those weeks, Baylor's going to struggle to win because they cannot play defense.
Well, the playbook is out on Sawyer Robertson. Make it rain, and then delay the game 3 times because he was off all day. He missed some touchdown throws where the guys, Kobe Prentice, was running wide open. And again, like you mentioned it, he's human. He's allowed to not have a great game, but you mentioned how A&M wins games every which way. Baylor can only win one way. And I apologize, Baylor fans, but we're going to go into the Dave Aranda existential talk again. I think we have to. 1-5 against TCU, and you said it, Craven, it's not a good sign when you're the defensive head coach, you're the de facto play caller, and your defense is a get-right game for the opposing team's offense.
I guess if I'm a university that's deciding if I want to bring a coach back, the question I'm asking is, what gives me hope in 2026? Because I get why you bring them back for 2025. They win 6 of the last 7. You got your quarterback back. You hit it, offensive coordinator, Bryson Washington, Josh Cameron will give you some NIL money. You can go to the portal. You can make that defense better. Look, it took a step from 23 to 24. If it takes another step to 25, like, we can go win a Big 12. I get why it happened there. Everything that's good about this team right now may not be here for the start of 2026. Sawyer Robertson's definitely not going to be here. Josh Cameron's not going to be here. We'll see what happens with the OC. Spav may get, an SEC or Big Ten type OC job, or maybe when all these musical chairs start playing, there's a G5 job out there that he feels suited for, that he can go try to be a head coach again. So, what are you bringing back? I guess would be my question if you're Baylor. And it wasn't like it was 42-3 and you got ran out of the paint. But if you watch that game, it wasn't that close. Like, they rallied to make it close, and they rallied to beat SMU, and they rallied to beat Kansas State. And that's great. Like, I get that the team has not quit on Dave Aranda, and that is awesome. That is a good sign of leadership. But it's just not working. And I don't know how you can convince yourself that it's going to work again. If Baylor doesn't make a change, it's because they don't want to pay the buyout, and it's because they don't want to jump into the waters with 20 other openings. Like that's it. That has to be the only reasons.
Yeah, right now we're comparing Baylor to UNC, which is, you want to avoid all UNC comparisons because TCU rushed for the most yards than they had, like the most yards all season, except for the UNC game in week 1.
Yeah, and it's not looking great down the road. Like, Baylor's back end of their schedule, one of the reasons I thought Baylor was a Big 12 contender going into the season is because of the back half of the schedule. You got Cincinnati and Arizona and Houston. Well, those are good teams.
This is why schedule analysis with Big 12 is impossible.
100%. And so, if you finish 500 or we're like, I don't know, you're just kicking the can down the road. Like, I think at this point, this is what Baylor football is. And this is what Baylor football is going to continue to be. And so whenever they want to do the buyout, whenever they want to go do another coaching search, like, they're going to have one. Like, I don't see how you could convince yourself that, like, you're going to wake up in 2026 at this time and Baylor's going to be 6-1 and in Big 12 contention. Like, they're getting passed up. They've been passed up by Tech. They've been passed up by TCU. I think they've been passed up by Houston. Like, they are 4th in the pecking order. SMU's passed them up since Aranda's been hired. That's not Aranda's fault. That's just kind of the way. Houston wasn't a Big 12 team back then. SMU wasn't an ACC back then when he won in 2020.
Well, it's kind of Aranda's fault for how they've looked on the field.
He can't stop Bill Armstrong from pumping in $1 billion to the program.
That's true.
Rank the P4 coaches in Texas. Rank the P4 programs in Texas. You are going to put Baylor at the end of both of those lists. That's it. Like, that's the whole thing.
So when you say if Baylor doesn't do it this year, it's because they don't want to get in the market when 20 other teams are in the market. Do you think that's because they would feel they're going to get the 19th best guy?
Yes.
The 20th best guy? Okay. It's not a good spot to be in.
If you're going up against Florida and Arkansas and Auburn and Penn State and UCLA, even, like, if there's that many Big Ten and SEC jobs out there, do you think you're going to get that guy? It wouldn't stop me. If I could figure out a way to get the buyout done, I would go do it. Because I don't think you were going to get those coaches that are going to those universities anyway. It's not like Baylor's going to go get Lane Kiffin or something, or Matt Rule again, right? Right.
Sometimes you got to go back to move forward.
And so you could go get the guys that are probably on your list if you want them. I just think it's whether the administration has the stomach for it, and they love Aranda. And they, I think in this era, Baylor doesn't want to be Tech. They don't want to be SMU. They don't want to money gun it, right? Like, their donors aren't built for that. Like, that's not, we know some of them, right? Like, that's not the Baylor donor way. They were hesitant to dip into the NIL. They're hesitant to dip into transfer portal. That wasn't just Aranda. And so I don't know if they want to be the program that goes and spends that kind of money and then also has to buy a new staff. It also has to do the rev share. And so maybe they kick it down the road if Aranda is able to get to 6-6 or better, but I just think it's delaying the inevitable.
I do as well. And you mentioned a team that's passed Baylor up. It's Houston, the Cougs. They walk it off against Arizona for a 31-28 win. The Cougars are 6-1 in a development that no one, and I mean no one, predicted that. Who thought the Cougars were going 6-1?
Me. We won't talk about the other 9 predictions in that one because it may.
As long as one hits, you can do the victory parade.
It might be the only one that hits. So because I started looking at the stats because Connor Wegman, I was doing the Fab 55 of the Statesman. I was the recruiting guy for USA Today in Texas when Wigman and Ewers and Klubnik were coming out in that same cycle. It ended up not happening because Ewers reclassified. But Wigman was always the athletic one of those three. Like, he could move. He wasn't like a dual threat, run the ball, like option read type quarterback, but he could move in the pocket. He could buy himself some time. He was tough enough to go get 5 or 6 yards. Like, he could have been a professional baseball player. Like, he's a really good athlete. And the injuries and Jimbo Fisher just sucked that out of him at A&M. And in 15 games over 3 years at A&M, he ran the ball 67 times for 261 yards and 2 touchdowns combined. He is now at he's ran the ball 66 times in 7 games just this year. So he is like one attempt from matching his whole A&M rushing. Like, Willie Fritz has made a career off of having quarterbacks who can run the ball. I was always curious how this marriage would fit because on paper it didn't seem like a Willie Fritz type quarterback. But shame on me for forgetting what Connor Wigman looked like in 2019 and 2020. Like, he's returned to form, and it's completely unlocked this Houston offense, and that's why they're 6-1.
I don't blame you for forgetting that because there's always been a divide for me between college beat writers and recruiting coverage guys, and you have done both. But guys who were college beat writers said Connor Wegman's a pocket passer. Like, I don't know what he'll look like in Colin Klein's offense at A&M when they want the QB to run. And then all the recruiting guys would go in the replies and say, look at Connor Wegman's numbers from high school. He had 700 rushing yards in 2 of his 3 years as a starter. And because I didn't cover Wegman in high school, I always leaned to the college guys. I was like, look, I get he ran the ball in high school. He hasn't showed a lick of that in college. But it's back, and I didn't know if he'd ever find it again, and he has with Houston. That's a credit to Willie Fritz.
He's gotten healthy. He's gotten lighter. He showed up, in shape and motivated. I think that's big. Sometimes when it doesn't work out, where you thought it was going to work, like, sometimes you get humbled, and you got to get back to work and get back to what got you there. I think that happened with Connor a little bit, and just new lease on life. But Fritz in that offense, like, they've been great. He ran the ball 14 times for 98 yards and a touchdown against Arizona. And late in that game, when they needed to get in field goal position for that Ethan Sanchez field goal kick that won it, it was Connor Wegman just man up and run the football and get those yards. Like, they are putting the ball in his hands in big moments. Last week, he throws for over 300. This week, he only almost rushes for 100. Like, maybe he's not first-round NFL draft pick guy like he was pegged as coming out of high school, but he's turning into a hell of a quarterback for the Houston Cougars.
And credit to Willie Fritz, because before the season, my question for Willie Fritz was, can the way he's won at every level previously work at this level with the NIL and the transfer portal? He's 30, 25-1 in year ones. And before this season, he was 44-17 in year twos. And the answer is yes, it can work at this level, as you wrote in the postgame column, Craven.
Yeah, Willie Fritz is really, really good. And I think we need to give a shout out to Austin Armstrong, the defensive coordinator.
Same, because I doubted him big time.
Right. A lot of people did. I know people who cover that Florida team who are out there in Florida, and, he kind of got play calling duties taken away from him. And they doubted, kind of like, oh, well, Fritz hired that guy. Like, that's interesting. He's young, he's still kind of figuring it out. Like, they gave up 14 quick points to Arizona, and they had no real answer for Fafita. And then they shut him out in the second and third quarter. And Fafita had great numbers. He was 24 of 26. But they took away the big plays. They kept everything in front of them. They dared the Wildcats to just put together long drives. And for 2 quarters, they were barren, and they couldn't do it. And that allowed Houston to get the lead and get back into the football game and go win this one. So the Cougars are playing complimentary football. They're 6-1. They have a shot in the Big 12, and we'll see what they can do in their final 5 games.
Also, who the hell is Rook Brown? 3.5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. He was everywhere.
Yeah, he was a late – I don't think Rook Brown gets there. He came in from Wyoming, and he came in after spring practice. I don't know if Rook Brown gets there if they don't lose A.J. Halsey. Right? Wow. Like, he was one of those kind of like, hey, well, we're light in the secondary now because we just lost a few guys. What more can we go get? They go get Rook Brown from Wyoming, and he was excellent against Arizona.
What a sliding doors moment that is. They'd still love to have A.J. Halsey, but Brown's awesome.
Sure.
Okay, let's go to the G6 ranks. North Texas wallops UTSA 55-17. one team's pissed off after a blowout loss, and the other team doesn't handle a blowout win. That's how this game went off. Where do you want to start, Craven? You want to start UNT for the win? You want to start UTSA, existential crisis talk?
No, I think we should start with North Texas.
Let's do it. I'll start with the offense first. Let me give you the three biggest players from this team. It is running back Caleb Hawkins, who doesn't have a picture on ESPN's website.
True freshman.
Who had 3 offers out of college, which included Central Oklahoma and Emporia State. He had 133 rushing yards, 90 receiving yards. Drew Mestamaker never started a game in high school, goes for 277 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then wide receiver Wyatt Young, who played high school quarterback at Katy Tompkins, was not a wide receiver in high school. 3 touchdown catches. Unbelievable.
Yeah, North Texas is doing this with a safety playing quarterback and a wide receiver who was a quarterback in high school. You know, like it's like when you play a video game and it's gotten too easy, and you're like, I'm just going to play this on a rookie mode and see what I can do with this deal. I'm going to recruit this wide receiver to be a quarterback or whatever. 584 yards of total offense, and that game against South Florida could have become 2 losses for a lot of programs. You know, I was curious at how North Texas would get off the mat. They've been bad against UTSA. They were favored last year, or pretty close to it, when they went into the Alamo Dome. Just got waxed against a Roadrunner team that wasn't very good. You know, Trailers kind of had the Mean Green's number here, and you thought, like, well, you know, if the wheels are going to fall off, this is when it's going to happen. You know, maybe Mestamaker kind of, you know, he loses some steam. Maybe teams figured some stuff out about it. I think that was more South Florida last week. I think South Florida is just on a different plane than maybe most of these American teams. They just have a bigger budget. I'm telling you, I have watched every G5 team in this state. I've gone to their campuses. I've seen their players. The South Florida team look more like Baylor than they do UTSA, right? So I think that was more about South Florida. And if you go and you really watch that game, like, it was a 4-minute span in which they lost by 27 points. They got outscored 28-0 in 4 minutes, and they didn't let that snowball into them. The crowd was good. You know, students showed back up for homecoming. And they just outclassed UTSA. It was close early, and then they just pulled away.
And credit to the students, because they fought through the rain too. That game was delayed. I saw some Instagram stories from UNT faithful that we work with that were like basically huddled under a tent in a hurricane monsoon, waiting out that game.
I'm glad they went.
Yeah, because this team, they're appreciating this team. This is a hell of a team they got, and got to give props to the defense too, because Robert Henry has 138 yards today at running back. Those basically came on 2 runs. One of those, which was the first play of the game, he goes 70-plus yards. And that was when I said, USF game broke this Mean Green defense. And instead, they force 3 fumbles. They're either first or second in the nation in turnovers gained. I don't know how many South Florida had, and they were 1. Hold Owen McCown to 84 passing yards on 25 attempts, which I know a lot of that was some drop passes too. But like, this defense is what Skylar Cassidy has done in 1 year is pretty special.
Yeah, very opportunistic. North Texas still rolling. They get Navy at home, so everything in front of the Mean Green. Like, they can still go make this a banner year, the best year in program history. Go compete for a conference championship. They still have, you know, an eye towards the CFP if they can run the table. This Mean Green team is really good, and I just like the way they handled that loss. That's the sign of maturity, a sign of a good coaching staff, a good sign of leadership behind the scenes. Like, that was just a professional performance from North Texas. On the other side,
yeah, I don't like how the other side handled the win last week.
In the 2 American American Conference losses so far for UTSA, they were outscored 24-7 in the second half against Temple and 31-3 in the second half against North Texas.
Yikes.
I mean, that's coaching. Like, that falls squarely on the coaching staff. Right now, UTSA is getting outcoached. They got outcoached by Casey Keeler and the staff. This week, they got outcoached by Eric Morris and the staff. And, you know, I don't think anybody who's inside these buildings can pinpoint which coach it is and what's going on. Yeah, I won't pretend to be that smart. But they've been a 500 program for the last 2 years, and they are getting outcoached in the second half, and the adjustments are just not there. The other teams are making adjustments that work better than UTSA's. I think we can say that clearly. And they're just an average football team. They were on top of the G5 mountain in the state for years. And now they are feeling what the other side has felt for these last couple of years. Like they are on the bottom now of the seesaw.
Yeah, if you're Trailer, we might have been a week early on the, hey, we're 33 at home and you want to fire everybody tour. Because now this is the 7th straight road loss.
Yeah, you play half of your games away from home. Right?
Yeah,
so
there is that side of the schedule.
That is part of it. But yeah, I mean, last year the defense was supposed to be elite with returning a bunch of guys, and it wasn't. And this year the offense was supposed to be elite with returning a bunch of guys, and it's not. Robert Henry is good. That's where the big plays come from is the run game. They have drop passes. They have penalties that call stuff back. Like it's just you just wouldn't watch it and be like, well, that's a well-coached football team. Like that's a clean football team. And that's what it takes. We'll talk about, other teams here in a little bit in the G5 that are losing close games. Like the margins aren't big. The talent discrepancies, it's not like the P4 where like there's Alabama and then there's this big gap to, everybody's pretty much the same. There's the South Floridas of the world and stuff, but I mean, most everybody's the same. It just comes down to 2 or 3 players and coaching. And UTSA does not have those 2 or 3 players anymore. They have one. They have Robert Henry, but they don't. Who's next? Right? It was
McCown.
Who's the second best player for UTSA?
McCown. I'll still say McCown.
It's probably Shad Banks, but that's my point. Is that there's just not. David Amador hasn't taken that next step. McEwen hasn't taken that next step. The tight end position, Houston Thomas hasn't been as good as we thought they were going to be. On the defensive side of the ball, like they don't have a Zay Frazier and those kind of guys or Rashad Wisdom. And so I just think it's a team that is not being coached as well as it was. Like I don't think they've replaced, the Barry Looney and the Will Stein. And the defense was never that great, but at the bottom has fallen off of it. They were
Trailer said they broke the record for missed tackles against North Texas.
Because like when they were really good, they were like in the 50s and 60s. They were like, 53, 58, 59, like in that range, right? So like never 1985 Chicago Bear dominant. Like it's G5 football. You're going to give up points. I just think offensively, they don't have the play. They don't have a Sincere McCormick. They don't have a Zachary Franklin or a Cephas, and they don't have a Will Stein, right? And you combine those 2 things together and you get what you get.
All right, let's do another team in the G5. You hinted at them that the margins aren't big and they're losing close games. Texas State, inventing painful ways to lose. Here's another one, 40-37 in double overtime to Marshall. I mentioned my CFP Pick'em League I'm in earlier. I have picked Texas State to win the last 3 games, just thinking this is going to be the week they turn it around, and they haven't yet.
Yeah. One of the big complaints, like within the fan base right now, it's Kenny not taking some field goals, kind of leaving some points on the field, and then they're losing some of these small margin football games. I don't mind the aggressiveness. I think that's just GJ Kinney. I think he's going to go for touchdowns. I don't think field goals win most of these games. And I think he knows what his defense looks like. And, here you need as many points as possible. But yeah, I mean, you've lost 3 in a row in the Sun Belt. It's like by 1 point, 3 points, and 6 points or 7 points. And 2 of them, though, those are in overtime. So 3 losses by a combined 11 points, 2 of them in overtime. Like those are just small margins. And to me, this is a coaching staff that's a little bit young and kind of figuring out how to handle those kind of in-game moments and the week-to-week stuff. And then this defense is what I thought it was going to be. This is why I had Texas State going 7-5 and not competing for a Sun Belt championship. I was never convinced that you could replace that amount of talent that they had to on defense and get better. And I don't think they have the personnel right now. And I'm not sure the DC is elevating that. He's not helping it either. And so it's a true pronged deal. It's the personnel isn't quite there what it was a year ago. And I'm not sure Texas State's defense is like making any adjustments. Like the same things kind of hurt them week in, week out. So the Bobcats are in a position where they just have to outscore opponents, and it's not always going to happen.
We did that show a month ago. Like, what did we get wrong in our preseason projections? And you called your own foul on Texas State going 7-5. You're right. You were wrong because they're going to go 5-7.
Yeah.
6-6.
I was right, then I was wrong, and now I'm right again.
Yeah.
It's just a shame. We talked about, Texas's defense being too good to waste. Texas State's offense is too good to waste. Brad Jackson threw for 444 yards.
Yeah.
Will Sparks had 168 catching. Chris Don had 180. He had like 160 yards catching the first half. Like Texas State's offense is Sun Belt championship level, and the defense is not holding on to the bargain. And you add the special team stuff. They missed a couple key field goals. They missed a key extra point against Arkansas State. And I think that's also adding to the GJ Kinney just not taking the points. Like, it's not a guarantee, obviously, And so, special teams isn't helping. Defense isn't helping. They're not good enough to overcome those, especially on the road.
Okay, last game on the docket. UTEP beat Sam Houston 35-17. Craven, this 3-play stretch you tweeted out sums it up. UTEP stuffed on 4th and 1 deep in their own territory. Sam Houston fumbles on the next play. UTEP returns it deep into Sam Houston territory. UTEP then throws an interception. That is absolute cinema. Martin Scorsese meme.
Yeah, it was. This happened so long ago. I forgot we were going to talk about it. I think the thing so the talking point I brought out of this for UTEP was Skylar Locklear's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is the quarterback of this football team. 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, or 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns. Had an awful mistake. Had a bonehead interception that you can't have in a close game. But other than that, thought he played really well. 21 of 26 passing the ball. That's what you want. That's what UTEP needed. And then on the Sam Houston side, I guess I just kind of feel sad.
Your 10 thoughts. Sam Houston fans don't read it, by the way, but it was very apt, and it had me laughing.
I just, you can't look at the stands. I don't know. It just is tough. And we knew this season was going to be tough. Like you and I both caught heat from the Sam Houston fan base leading into the season because hey, we won 10 games last year. How can you think we're going to be like worse than UTEP and Rice? And they were up against it. Phil Longo gets hired late. They have no home games. Like, we knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't know it would be like this depressing.
I looked at ESPN and they had said the attendance was 4,200, but then I'd also seen on Twitter X, and this was a UTEP account, so this could just be
that was a troll. That was a troll,
but it was kind of believable,
right? That's
that's 600 people there.
That's what makes a good troll. And that number is more close to how many people were there than the reported sold amount, right? Because for those who aren't,
you can't count the band.
For those who aren't inside baseball, like that announced attendance is how many tickets are sold, not how many people walk through the gates. And there wasn't anybody there. I think I joked about this on this podcast maybe during the week. A younger me who didn't have a kid would have gone to that game and talked to people in the stands and why are you here? Tell me your story. It's probably a great one. They win a national championship in the spring of 2021, and then they go into the FBS, and they kind of overcome that really bad first year, and they win 10 games. And it's man, Sam Houston is this fun East Texas program, close to a recruiting, but it's kind of on the rise. And everything since then has just been, you lose the head coach, athletic directors talking about you don't have enough money to do it. Head coach kind of already setting up expectations of talking about how long he went there for the portal, before he gets there. If you're a student, how do you even go to this game on Wednesday?
Yeah. You have school the next day and you have to go through all of Houston traffic to go watch that.
For those who don't know, Sam Houston is northwest of Houston, and Shell Energy Stadium is on the southeast side. It's like a 2-hour trek, really, to track, especially for a 6:00 kick. You'd have to leave at 1, and you wouldn't get home till midnight. You're just not for an 0-6 football team. This is not going to happen.
That'd be tough to go to if you were 6-0.
Right. And so it was always going to be a lost season. I was just hopeful it would be a 3 or 4 wins, and they would look competitive in losses, and you'd be able to point to some stuff, kind of like year one. Whereas they're 0-8, but you weren't depressed about it. It was oh, well, they're right there. They're going to turn the corner.
Yeah, they're unlucky.
They just got to figure out a way to win and close these games. It's this depth thing. Once they have 85 scholarship player, you could make excuses and reasons into why it looked like that. This is just a bad football team. 6 of their 7 losses are by 17 points or more.
Yeah, I don't have any more to say. I mean, it's Phil Longo sitting in the press conference as rap music from the winning locker room's blaring in his press conference, and he's just looking sad as can be. It's a tough year. they weren't set up for success, but it's even been worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
Wow, what a bummer to end this one on.
Dude, the power poll, I have been looking for reasons to change number like 9 through 13 for weeks, and they all just keep losing. Like Texas State has lost 3 straight conference games, and I cannot move them out of 9th because behind them is UTSA, who they beat, a Rice team who UTSA beat, then UTEP and Sam. So just a very disappointing. The P4 has been excellent in the state. A very disappointing G5 season outside of North Texas.
Yeah, and part of that is just nationally, that's how it is at the G6 now, but part of that is also our G6 teams have fallen short of expectations.
Yep.
Because it's happening in conference play too.
Right.
Okay. That's going to wrap it up for week 8. Unbelievable. We are in mid-October now, going on to week 9 next week. Craven, any closing thoughts before we get on out of here?
No, I mean, I still think we got 2 playoff contenders. I think Tech can still kind of run the table and figure it out. I am excited for those. If you're still sticking around listening to this podcast an hour and 15 minutes in, congratulations, by the way. Thank you. And I'm going to LSU for the first time. So if y'all have any recommendations on that, please send them my way before this weekend.
Going down to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, pretty pumped.
All right. Well, we will have you guys previewed and prepped for week 9 coming up next week on a Wednesday morning. But until then, thank you for tuning in, sticking with us for an hour and 16. For senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates signing off for the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast.